What is going on, Diablo 2 fans? Jabrunski here. Today I'm going to be breaking down the Wrath Bowazon. Now this build was never meant to work. I think when anybody chooses the bow for making a Bowazon in Diablo 2, this is the last rumor that they would choose to use, and probably for good reason. It doesn't have a lot of enhanced damage on the actual bow itself. But with that being said, I wanted to challenge myself and actually see if I could make this Bowazon build viable, and I think I did accomplish that. And like all of my previous build videos, timestamps are in the description, so if you guys want to bounce back and forth between the attributes, the gameplay, or the skill tree or whatever, they're there for you guys to use, so please take advantage of them. Other than that, guys, I really do hope you enjoy this video. Let's jump in. So before I dive into the attributes, gear, and skill tree, there's three main points that I want to elaborate on for this Wrath Bowazon specifically. And the first is very controversial, and that is what is the best primary source of damage for the Wrath Bowazon. Now, typically a lot of hardcore BOA players like to use multi-shot. Now, in my opinion, for this particular build, strafe trumps multi-shot. Now, while it is true, strafe can be kind of a little bit annoying when you're surrounded by monsters in all different directions because she'll just kind of ping back and forth. It does work very well on small targeted cluster groups of monsters, but the main advantage to this rumored Wrath is the chance to proc Decrepify. And if you're using multi-shot, only the two center arrows have that chance of proccing that really powerful Necro Curse, but every single arrow from strafe has a chance to proc Decrep. So honestly, in my opinion, which you guys will see when we go over the gameplay of this build, strafe is definitely the best choice. Again, this is in my opinion because you really want to emphasize that chance of proccing Decrepify. The second point that I want to touch on is the bow itself actually has the attribute cannot be frozen, which is very interesting because it opens up a second ring choice slot besides the meta Ravenfrost, which typically every melee or Bowazon character uses for the cannot be frozen, dexterity, and attack rating. But even though the rune word Wrath has cannot be frozen, Ravenfrost is definitely still a viable unique ring to use. But I actually like the idea of using potentially a really nice blood ring that has like resistances, strength, dexterity, and attack rating. And it does help substitute some of the Bowazon's weaker kind of resistances. Again, Ravenfrost is definitely viable, but that's definitely one thing that you can take advantage of with this build is an alternative ring slot. And the third and final point that I want to elaborate on is how do you make up for the lack of raw damage that's on the rumored Wrath? And really the answer is just expensive gear. I know a lot of people are going to go off on how much wealth is put into this build to make it viable, but I have a Pride Mercenary with a Might Aura, full inventory of max damage, AR, life, small charms, and grand charms, and then I also have a max dexterity attribute setup. So for those that don't know, dexterity increases the raw damage on ranged weapons in Diablo 2, so that's why I went max dexterity instead of max vitality. But that covers the three main specific points that I wanted to elaborate on, so let's dive into the attributes. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a max dexterity Bowazon build setup, so I have enough points into strength to equip my gear. Now, depending on what shield you want to use on the offhand, if you use something like an ethereal lidless wall, you can actually get away with a little bit less strength. But because of my gear, I actually have a lot of plus strength on this Bowazon build, so I just went with enough to have an ethereal spirit on swap to get that extra skill point to buff battle orders, because I have nothing into vitality and nothing in energy. So I have 848 life before bow, which actually turns out to be around 1200 with the CTA buff. Nothing into mana, you don't need to worry about that. And then again, everything else is put into dexterity to increase the maximum damage. So you can see I actually only have 333 to just under 2k strafe damage. It does go up with the mercenaries aura buffs, but yeah, a max dexterity setup. For the resistances, I have negative 15 for poison and negative 15 for cold, which they're not, those are kind of the two resistances you don't worry too much about, but I do have maxed fire and nearly maxed lightning. So overall, I think for having cannot be frozen, nearly capped fire res, and lightning res, this is a pretty decent Bowazon setup. She is kind of your quote-unquote glass cannon with very low health, but for this particular Bowazon build, I think you need max dexterity to crank your damage. As far as the skill tree goes, we have nothing into the javelin skill tree because this is a boa. For passive and magic, again, this is, you can kind of tailor it depending on how you want to build your Bowazon specifically, but I just put 1 hard point into dodge, 1 into avoid, and then 1 into evade. So these are just really nice passive skills, which are super annoying on the Bowazon in my opinion, but they're very useful on a glass cannon Bowazon. Actually, sorry, I should say I have 3 hard points into evade. Or sorry, 3 hard into avoid because we have 6 dodge, 8 in avoid, 6 into evade, and then I maxed critical strike, maxed penetrate, and maxed pierce. So I'm not actually using razor tail because I need to use a different belt to get the maximum increase attack speed breakpoint with the Grand Matron bow base that I used for the Rumored Wrath. So I maxed pierce. And then for our skills here, I put 1 into magic arrow, 1 into multi-shot, 1 into cold arrow, and then I max guided arrow and I max strafe. Depending on if it's like a single target Diablo, it can be useful to proc the crep with strafe and then switch back and forth to guided arrow, or you can just go full strafe and put alternative skill points into something like decoy or Valkyrie. It's really up to you, but that's how I kind of broke down my skill tree. Again, feel free to let me know in the comment section below if there's anything you guys would tweak. As far as the gear goes, this is where we kind of dive into the super expensive gear. So starting off with the inventory, just all of the best max damage, AR, life, small charms, and grand charms that I have, and a torch and Annie, and that is purely just to max my damage. I do carry a cube to kind of toss any items that drop and then go back to Kane and identify. If I really wanted to, I could toss this for more max damage AR small charms. If I really wanted to min-max, I don't think it makes a big deal, or big difference I should say. Helmet is Giant Skull with 2 really crappy 15 increase attack speed enhanced damage jewels. I think this is a really good helmet for this particular build because it gives you the knockback and plus strength, and it helps me reach the max increase attack speed breakpoint with the 30 IAS. But knockback is very useful and very important for this build. Being max strafe, every single arrow has a chance of knocking back a monster, so it's a very safe Bowazon build. Amulet, High Lords for the increased attack speed and lightning res. You can use Cat's Eye, but then you're going to drop a lot of lightning resistance, so we're going to fall from 63. We're going to lose 35 light res if we use Cat's Eye. Boots, War Travelers for strength, vitality, and the raw damage that they add. You can use Gore Riders, I guess, if you wanted to, but Crushing Blow is a little bit nerfed on range versus melee, so the raw damage and just the vitality and strength bonus from War Travs makes these the best boots for the Wrath Bow in my opinion. Body armor, Fortitude for everything that we love, the enhanced damage and resistances. That's really important because we have next to no damage on the bow, which here is Wrath, Polum Burmel in a 4 open socket Grand Matron bow with 3 to bone crossbow skills. It does have the 30% chance of casting to Crepify, the life tap as well with ED to demons and enhanced damage and attack rating to the undead, with cannot be frozen and crushing blow and a couple other stats that aren't really too important. But yeah, not a lot of enhanced damage on this bow, so that's why we're using Fortitude and the inventory. For the belt, Nos Feratu's Coil. This is a nice belt, slows target, life stolen per hit, and increased attack speed. That 10% is really important to reach the 80, which is the max IS breakpoint using the Rumored Wrath in a Grand Matron bow base. And then the 2 rings, one is a rare ring with dual leech, lightning, and fire res, and the other is a blood ring with strength, dexterity, and then again, a little bit of life leech with lightning and fire resistance. So that's how I kind of nearly cap out my fire and light res with this build. For the mercenaries gear, a little interesting, as you could say, the choices that I used. Pride and a Thresher just for the concentration aura, and this is a might aura mercenary for, again, coupling those 2 enhanced damage auras to really boost the boa's damage output. Now the helmet and body armor is where things get interesting. I went with Duress or Crushing Blow and Open Wounds. It's nice to have some form of Crushing Blow on your mercenary. Now you could use G-Face and like Chains of Honor or G-Face and Fortitude, which I have used actually on a previous stream testing out this build, but I really like Duress because of the cold damage, which helps slow down Diablo. It does have Crushing Blow, which is really important. It's nice to kind of get those early damage hits on Diablo, but the cold damage coupled with an ethereal Blackhorn's face that has slows target by 20%, plus the slows target on my Nos Coil, and then also the Decrep proc really helps kind of make Diablo almost like he's underwater, which you guys will see when we do the example run. So I don't think you need Life Leech on the Mercenary for this build because we're only playing on players 1 or 3. And then I have Knockback, which really, the Mercenary is almost never doing any damage. So that's why I didn't go Fortitude, because even with Fortitude, Pride just has so little damage, the Mercenary does next to nothing. So really, Mercenary is just there to give us the concentration aura from Pride. But you'll never have an issue, again, like I said, because of the knockback, and also occasionally when life tap procs, it will heal the Mercenary if he's physically attacking and he does need the replenishment of his life globe. So now I will show you guys this build in action. We're going to go players 3 difficulty, just so you can see me type it in. I am on players 3. Honestly, this is really just a players 1 or 3 build. I don't think it's capable of doing anything higher than that, or I mean, it probably could. It's just going to be extremely slow. Like, this players 3 is slow enough as it is. But I'll do a Chaos Sanctuary run. Actually, my favorite place to run with the Bowazon. So, like I said, about 1258 life with battle orders. Mercenary is just under 4k, but he's really just there to keep the Pride proc for my Boa. Like I mentioned with Strafe, it's very effective on small cluster groups when they're together, but when the bosses are all over the place, she'll kind of ping back and forth between where she's attacking, so it's really good to try and stay back and then kill the clusters of monsters as you get to them and not kind of dive in and be surrounded in all directions, because then it really diminishes the powerful, like the strength of Strafe, which I guess if I get surrounded, you'll see that. But you definitely want to try and avoid that. Always stay back and just focus on one small group at a time. The only thing that's really struggles with this build is Stone Skin and Physical Immune. Then when you break the physical immunity with Decrepify, those monsters do take forever to kill. So typically, I would just avoid them. It's up to you if you want to sit there trying to kill them. But for players 3, like, this build is extremely expensive, but I do think it does a good job clearing chaos in players 3 though. Pride also has the back up here a second. Pride also has the hit blinds target that will occasionally override your Decrepify, but it's not too big of an issue because most of the time he's not even attacking anyways, because we all know Mercenary AI is extremely stupid too. I'll try and, once we get into chaos here, I'll do a quick little demo of showing multi-shot and how I think it's a lot worse for this particular build. There's multi-shot. So the rate of attack is a lot less than Strafe, and you can see that the Crep is really not proccing too often. This really isn't, because only those 2 center arrows actually do proc, and then we switch back to Strafe. Each arrow has a chance of proccing that Necro Curse. That's why, again, like I said in the intro main points, that I really do think this Bowazon build is Strafe. Like, Strafe only is what I think works. You could use a different bow base and maybe proc Decrepify and then use multi-shot. If you use maybe a matte bow, you could get better increased attack speed frames with your gear, but I went with Grand Matron bow just because the raw damage of the bow is so little to begin with. Yeah, despite being extremely expensive gear, I do think it's getting the job done. Like, this is players 3 Chaos run. Obviously, it's not your like meta Faith setup or like a Windforce setup with Faith Boa, but you can see with knockback as well. Like, it's really don't really have any close calls with this build. Like, maybe now when I'm kind of right in their face, but then we have like avoid, evade, dodge, and all those passive skills, which help us avoid a lot of potential damage. Again, they're extremely annoying on the Bowazon, but viable on the Boa. It's kind of funny how that works. When we proc Decrep, they're slow, and we also have the Nos Coil that slows down monsters as well. Plus, with the 50% slowdown from Decrep as it is, you really... never have any close calls. It's a good idea as well to clear the entire seal here before we pop Infector. Constant curse proccing too is pretty funny. The noise. You guys might find it annoying, but I actually don't mind it. Yeah, so the mercenary didn't have life leech there and he was fine. It's just everything with Decrepify being slowed down, and occasionally if he does melee attack, and we have life tap proc like that, never have to worry about it. You can see how slow some of those monsters attack. When the mercenary, when he has his cold damage from duress and black horns, which you'll get to see when we see the main Diablo fight. It really does help because Diablo can be a little bit difficult if you're strafing and you get strafe locked, and then he uses his lightning inferno or his fire attack on you. So slowing him down and then just carefully using a combination of strafe and guided arrow does help avoid that strafe lock. And then when he's super slow attacking with like the combo of the mercenary's gear, my gear, and Decrep, it's just again increased safety. No close calls with Desace because we just hang back. Forgot to launch my loot filter for this example around here. I'm not used to seeing all that stuff on the ground. But here's where they're split up a little bit. I talked about earlier about how Faith kind of is all over the place when it works better when they're just clustered in a small group. It's definitely a scenario where multi-shot does trump if you're using a different Bowazon build. And because we have a 30% chance to cast Decrep, 5% life tap, that when life tap does proc, it's just enough to replenish your health globe if you need it, and then Decrep will override it again. You don't really need to worry about the curses overriding because the 30 to 5, typically everything is almost always Decrept. Last little buff, Vizier, and then Diablo. Pretty quick. Now you definitely want to stay in this inner circle. If you stay outside, he casts the Bone Prison on you, and that can be very frustrating with the Boa. But again, we just single tap strafe if we don't want to get strafe locked. And you can switch back and forth between that and guided arrow. That's what I mean how I only hit it once. Shoot the 5 arrows and then move. Shoot the 5 arrows, move. Right there, I got kind of strafe locked in the lightning a little bit. Strafe locked again. You can see he's super slow with the Decrep proc and then the rest of our gear with the mercenary. The Diablo Diablo kill, excuse me, is a little bit slow. But let's see if we got Tal's Amulet. That'd be pretty cool. Tal's Amulet to end this Wrath Bowazon build.
Yes.
Angelics. Is okay. Is what it is. Well, guys, there you have it. That wraps up my Wrath Bowazon build. Definitely extremely expensive, but I do think I accomplished my goal of making it viable. With that being said, feel free to let me know in the comment section below if there was any gear changes or skill tree changes that you guys would make. Kind of set with what I selected, but I'm definitely all ears for any suggestions. With that being said, if you could throw a like on this video, share it, and even consider subscribing if you're new to my Diablo channel. I post new weekly content and stream on a consistent basis, so there's always new stuff to look forward to. Your support with a sub would mean a lot. Other than that, guys, I hope you have a fan-frickin-tastic day, and I'll see you on my next Diablo 2 video or live stream. Peace out.